The average American drinks more than 45 gallons of bottled water per year. That's a lot of water and a lot of bottles. It seems especially jarring considering we get the same amount of water from our taps for the low price of our utility bill. But at some point, bottled water not only became popular, it was downright hip. So hip, in fact, that designer water became something advertising companies assured us we cannot do without. Fancy bottles, sparkling waters from the far reaches of Earth, and even Major Bling has taken over the bottled water industry and turned it into the next top fashion. But is bougie top-shelf bottled water actually any better for you than the stuff that comes out of your faucet? Or is it all just a marketing game? Well, today, come hell or high water, we're finding out the difference between luxury bottled water and regular water. But before we post this thirst trap, why don't you swim over to that subscribe button? Then drop us a line in the comments below and tell us what other bottled backstories you want to hear about next. For now, let's try and keep our heads above water. While we can't precisely nail down the first time someone poured water into a bottle and said, "This is much easier," we can say that bottled water, as we know it today, established itself in the 1970s, and it gained traction around 1977. Perrier bottled water started to sell in urban areas in the United States, where it became a niche product that was favored by urban professionals. The competition was not very stiff back then, with Perrier and Crystal Geyser entering the market around the same time, the latter of which meant the enticing promise of a natural alpine spring water sourced near the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. Their oversized bottle was also hard to miss on the shelves. Using eye-catching bottles that boasted of exotic water sources is one tactic that would continue on as more consumers showed interest in pre-bottled water. The industry really started to pick up with the introduction of polyethylene terephthalate, or PET plastics. This clear, lightweight plastic innovation made bottling and distributing drinking water more practical, while also being more visually pleasing than the typical cloudy plastics that were used prior. Not only was it more efficient, but it meant that smaller operations were able to get into the water bottling game, while it was still locally sourced and family-owned. Bottled water saw a major uptick in popularity throughout the 1980s, with wider adoption of PET plastics, which made mass production a widely available option for many distributors who now recognized that bottled water is clear-colored gold. Helping bottled water's image significantly was a 1986 EPA warning about high levels of lead present in drinking water, scaring consumers away from their faucets. This coincided with the rise of supermodels and actresses, photographed carrying around bottles of Evian water, causing bottled water to become a major fad in the 1990s and throughout the 2000s, with the likes of Coca-Cola and Pepsi getting in on the game with brands like Dasani and Aquafina. You can tell it's getting serious when they start naming bottles of water like luxury cars. Meanwhile, public concern over drinking water jumped from 32% to 66% and sometimes climbed as high as 80%. More and more folks refused to drink from the tap, thanks to widely believed claims that it might contain lead and other heavy metals and toxins. Who would come to the rescue of concerned tap water drinkers? Luxury bottled water, of course. Perrier's massive marketing campaign in the 1970s allowed them to convince folks that buying a bottled version of something that comes out of your sink for free was not only a good idea, it was also cool. The idea of an affordable way to get a bit of European sophistication was too much to pass up for urban professionals and the yuppie generation. As its popularity grew, companies began treating bottled water and staying hydrated as a fashion statement. This is still the case today, with celebrities like Jennifer Aniston and Zendaya telling their followers that drinking a certain brand of bottled water will make them feel younger and more revitalized. By the 1980s, most smaller bottling companies were forced out or bought up until only 10 companies controlled over half the market. Gone were the days of family-owned operations. Brands like Perrier were bought out by the likes of Nestle, and the market further shifted once Coca-Cola and Pepsi joined the fray. The soft drink giants already had access to local water sources for their cola, as well as the equipment needed to bottle it, so adding bottled water to the roster was a relatively cheap move. It seemed the only way to stand out in a market now controlled by giants was to make dazzling claims about the quality of the water. While many companies like Evian promise mineral-rich water sourced from French springs, or Fiji water sourced from an artesian aquifer in Viti Levu, many other high-end water brands decided to let their bottles do most of the talking. Ornate glass bottles, crystals, or even diamonds became common to adorn bottles bottles of water that often don't amount to much more than tap water. Brands like Filico, Bling H2O, and Svalbardi specialized in beautifully crafted bottles and exotic sources, such as iceberg water or deep-sea Hawaiian water. But this elite water isn't cheap. Brands like Filico will charge you $219 a bottle, while Kona Nagari water has a price tag of around $402. If you have an extra $60,000 lying around, you can't go wrong with Acqua di Cristallo Tributo o Modigliani. But if you really want to show off while hydrating, Beverly Hills 90 H2O Diamond Edition is the hydration for you. Released in 2018 and adorned with white gold and over 850 diamonds, this refreshing drink will set you back a whopping $100,000 a bottle. Somewhere around here is a good time to mention that water literally falls from the sky, or it used to. The bottled water industry became the largest beverage category by volume in the U.S. in 2016, surpassing carbonated soft drinks with about 44 gallons consumed per capita by 2019. But all that popularity isn't without controversy, as the impact bottled water has on the environment can't be ignored. Most plastic bottles are not recycled into new bottles, if the bottles are even recycled at all. Bottles are oftentimes downcycled into other products such as fleece, carpeting, or the stuffing inside sleeping bags. However, this isn't what's actually happening with all that bottled water waste. Most of the bottles end up in the ocean or burned, with the risk of releasing toxic fumes into the air. But even before the water hits the bottle, water production takes a massive toll on local water resources. In regions like India or Europe, companies like Coca-Cola or Nestle have come under scrutiny for over-extracting water, raising prices and limiting access to water for poorer communities. Furthermore, a great deal of water is used in manufacturing. For example, it takes around 40,000 gallons of H2O to build a single car. Ironically, one 16.9-ounce plastic bottle of water takes about 1.4 gallons of water to produce. So hopefully it gives you superpowers or something. The oft-repeated joke that all bottled water is actually tap water in disguise isn't totally untrue, as most of them start out from the same or similar sources. What separates tap from bottled water is the purification process, where water is run through microfiltration, reverse osmosis, UV light exposure, and ozonation to remove any contaminants. It also removes anything that could cause a taste. They leave the flavor blasting to La Croix. After that, the water is bottled and shipped off, clean as can be. Not all bottled water is built the same, however. Poland spring water, for instance, doesn't actually come from Poland, but is sourced from natural spring-fed sources in Maine, so it's halfway true. Fiji water, on the other hand, actually is sourced directly from Fiji, but that also means it needs to be shipped over 5,000 miles to get to the United States, which is a major factor in its premium price. Bottled water collected from springs typically comes from drilled boreholes, which are hydrologically connected to the spring. So, even though spring water isn't actually scooped out from a spring with a long metal ladle by someone looking vaguely like Bob Ross, the FDA still counts it as spring water. Some higher-end brands utilize rare water sources in order to justify high prices, such as Svalbardi, which uses pure iceberg water, or Kona Nagari, which sources its water from deep in the ocean. The tactics used in collecting, bottling, and shipping certain luxury water set it aside from the Kirkland signature brand you would find at Costco, adding a few or several more dollars to the price tag. Other brands use a mixture of various minerals called pixie dust blend to create distinct flavors or rejuvenating effects in every bottle. While bottled water companies like to claim that their specific variety of H2O will make you younger, run faster, jump higher, and cleanse your body, the truth is, there is very little difference between water in most bottled water brands and the water that comes from your faucet. Bottled mineral waters are an excellent source of minerals like calcium and magnesium, but the same thing can usually be found in most municipal water supplies. A 2018 EcoWatch report even found that 64% of bottled water in the U.S. is sourced from municipal supplies to begin with. In other words, they're essentially gussying up our own tap water and selling it right back to us. Sure, it may be run through about 1 million filters and blasted with UV rays and sprinkled with mineral dust, but reputable studies have shown that bottled water is often not any safer, healthier, nor tastier than tap water. So claims about the benefits of alkalinity or special treatments changing the pH of your blood are debunked by real scientific evidence. In other words, while bottled water may say it can do amazing things for your body, the claims don't really hold much water. So what do you think? Are you a bottled water drinker or do you prefer tap? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're here, check out some of these other weird history food videos.